Thanks for your attendance. I'd like to welcome all members to the meeting. I'd also like to welcome Derek Penman and Frank Gallop, who are here from the HMICS. Fiona Miller from SPA is also attending this morning, but she's running a wee bit late. At the last meeting, our SPA representative, Brian Barber, informed us that he was moving on. So I'm pleased to inform the committee that George Graham has been assigned as our new SPA board representative. And I'll be meeting with George next Monday just for a wee catch-up. Sederunt, apologies. Lucy, any apologies?
Good morning. We have 10 members present. We are quorate. Councillor Groom is not present, but may be along later in the meeting.
Thanks, Lucy. Any members got declaration of interest? No? Thank you. Just before we go into the minute of the meeting the 3rd of September, I would just like to provide a brief comment on the visit to the Govan Police Control. We visited there on the 30th of November. This visit was a very good experience and has, I believe, provided assurance for the members who attended. The visit included a walk round of the contact centre where calls are received. We also discussed with staff who explained how the system works. The second part of the tour included visiting the area control room where the calls are logged and responded. The ACR has staff dedicated to Dumfries and Galloway with access to local knowledge who coordinate our police on the ground. I would like to thank Police Scotland for the invite. And just a note from that day from ourselves, it was noticed that Dumfries and Galloway was the only division not to have access to CCTV from Govan. I think it would be good if members of the Police and Fire Rescue Service Subcommittee, which we are, were provided with an update on CCTV project and the partnership work with the police. Is that agreed with the members? Is that pertinent to ask for that report? Thank you. Is there any members that were on the visit would like to make a brief comment on the visit? Alistair?
Yes, thanks, Chairman. I found that a very useful visit and worthwhile going. I took particular comfort in the fact that there is a dedicated team who have actually even visited Dumfries, and so they have particular knowledge of the situation, and that is comforting. Although when I got back home and I said to my wife, she's still not convinced that, but that's my own personal situation. But I did find it very interesting and useful. Go there.
Thanks. Any other members that were on the visit, Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was a really instructive visit, and I also welcomed, aside from that you touched on, was the fact that we got a wee bit of an explanation as to the level of training that people had to undergo before they would be sort of put live, as it were, to deal with whether it was 101 calls or 999 calls, just to make sure they had the appropriate level of training and experience, which has been something that I think people were concerned about, just to make sure their calls were getting dealt with. But took great comfort from that, and I think it was a benefit to all of those who attended.
Any other members that were on the visit? Craig?
Chair, yes, thank you. Just to echo the comments of my fellow councillors as well. But from that as well, I was able to take away, when we go back to our community councils and that are making some of these complaints, and members of the public, that from that visit we've gained a lot of knowledge that we can pass on to them, and some of the reasonings behind maybe some of the issues that they've brought forward to us. But again, with the area control room, I was really pleased, and it gave me a lot of comfort to find that calls relating to this division are passed through to that area with people that have better knowledge of the area. So issues that have occurred in the past hopefully will not occur as often, shall we say, in the future.
That's great. Ian?
Yeah, I don't want to be the odd one out since I was there as well. I found it a very worthwhile visit. A big step forward from the former Strathclyde control room in Glasgow. It's amazing how the technology's moved on although there is still room for improvement, there certainly are still some calls that are slipping through the net. But I dare say the Police Scotland are on top of that.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I think it was a really worthwhile visit, and it was also an opportunity to get a show at Ian's big fancy jag. Item 10 is a minute of meeting the third. Oh, sorry, we've got now. Sorry, Graham.
Thanks, Chair. I wasn't there for obvious reasons, but you mentioned in your preamble that there was access to local knowledge. Is that, can I phone a friend, or how does that work? Could you elaborate on it, please?
So we actually visited upstairs a corner where there was two guys with local knowledge there, and when we looked up on the screens, you could actually see where the patrols were and where all the areas. So there was two people there designated to take calls for the local area. Hopefully they didn't just ship them in because we were coming up, but we were quite pleased to see that there was an area there that was actually designated to Dumfries and Galloway.
Any chance of getting those patrol car positions transferred to our phones or something like that? Would that be help to people?
Well, it'll be another step forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a minor point. It's just a typo for my name, really, because my name was the same when I left as when I started the meeting, so it's just to ensure that on page 2, member Stephen Thompson with a P left the meeting. Thank you very much.
As somebody that gets a name spelled all the time, wrong all the time, Stephen, I appreciate your complaint. Yeah. Anything else in the minute? Item 4 on the agenda, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 6 months performance update, 1st April 2015 to 30. The purpose of the report is to present the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 6 months performance update for 1st April 2015 to 30 September 2015. Alan Fairbairn, local senior officer, received from Scottish Fire and Rescue to present the report and answer members' queries. And then we'll open up to member debate. Alan?
Thank you, Chair. As previously, I'm once again pleased to present in the agreed format the Services Local Performance Indicators for Q1, Q2 for 2015-2016, and additionally the fuller Annual Performance Report for 2014-2015. The 10 indicators presented in the Q1, Q2 report directly correlate with and consequently provide a measure of our performance against our stated key local priorities for the area. It really is a mixed picture being displayed across these indicators, with both pleasing and not so pleasing figures and trends to report. There are optimistic and pleasing figures or trends for all deliberate primary fires, accidental dwelling fires, and non-fatal fire casualties. Incidences of accidental dwelling fires have been stubbornly static over the last 5 years. However, during the reporting periods in question, there has been a pleasing reduction. This category is a key priority for both the area and the service alike. It is also inextricably linked to the number of non-fatal fire casualties we deal with. This correlation is further evidenced by the continued reduction and pleasingly small numbers of citizens harmed by accidental dwelling fires. I would also like to note that in addition to these reducing numbers, there is also an identified reduction in the severity of these incidents, with the majority being confined to the item first ignited or limited to the room of origin. And again, pleasingly, the harm to individuals is, in the majority, limited to minor smoke inhalation. This can be attributed in part to the service's extensive programme of home fire safety visits and the ongoing promotion and provision of smoke detectors, giving an early alert of fire in the first instance and a corresponding competent emergency response thereafter. Of more concern is the increasing number of special services at road traffic collisions and the number of resultant fatalities. No agency can address this particular issue in isolation. There must therefore be a refocusing of the partnership arrangements and the approach taken by the Road Safety Partnership. Other indicators showing an upward trend include special services in general, malicious false alarms and unwanted false alarm signals. The reasons for these are as anticipated and are noted in the report's commentary. However, with regard to the category of special services in particular, it is undoubtedly the competencies and skill sets of our personnel which is seeing requests for assistance from other agencies to assist, casualty care and access to premises, in addition to out-of-hospital cardiac arrest being a few examples. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sam. Open to members. Questions? Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. A note on page 36 of the report, or if you're looking at the colour document, page 8, crews tackle Eco House blaze. Of course, like most people, I'm totally signed up to, well, there's people meeting in Paris at this moment to just address eco problems and totally in favour of eco houses, so I presume obviously in the future there'll be a lot more. However, that brings me to the consideration of the fire risks surrounding eco houses and whether that's something that the Fire and Rescue Service are aware of and any advice we can offer.
Chair, that particular instance, the building of eco houses and building standards in general, they all comply with building standards, so we're absolutely cited on that. We also have our Prevention and Protection Department with experts within that department who also advise and liaise closely with building standards, architects departments of any new buildings. With this particular, the difficulty this type of building was given is because it is super insulated, so it was very difficult once the fire had got into the sort of the cavities. It was a very difficult process for our crews to gain access into the interior of the building, the structure of the building, because that's where the fire had driven itself. And that was the only difference, because it was super insulated for eco reasons.
Come back, Alistair.
So, can we draw a distinction between a house under construction? Is that more vulnerable than a house that's once completely constructed? Is the point of vulnerability during its construction phase?
In general, and maybe in other parts of Scotland, buildings under construction are more vulnerable, but it's more so from a crime perspective. Once these buildings are fully constructed and signed off by building standards and our own people, they are to the required standards. They will have hardwired smoke detection fitted throughout the building as per the building standards requirements. So they are much safer for occupants once they are inside them. Thank you.
Richard?
Thanks, Chair. On page 41, the Dumfries and Galloway area resources, last line on the table page, water rescue resource, and the table is showing that there's still an existing water rescue resource at Annan, but I'm of the belief that this has now been withdrawn. Is there a report on the reasons for the withdrawal of the water resource? Annan seems a very good location to launch from, either at Waterfoot or the new slipway at the harbour. Lots of incidents in the Solway which can be easily accessed from there. There was also flooding incidents over the weekend. We were very lucky in Annan because the tides didn't coincide with the heavy rainwater, and it would have been ideal if there had been flooding in Annan.
As the committee is previously aware, the service is undergoing a full fundamental review of its specialist resources across the whole of Scotland, bringing together the 8 legacy services. There was a degree of duplication there. There was resources in close proximity. So a full process to establish what was the requirement across Scotland, where resources were best fitted and where they were needed, was undertaken. That process was previously indicated to members in a presentation a while back. The service is currently undergoing that specialist review. Some of it can be done very quickly and resources moved in to different parts of the country as a matter of course. Other resources being moved will have a requirement for either a build or an adaptation to certain premises. So that will take a slightly longer. In regard to your particular question on the water rescue resources, we had 3 locations within Dumfries and Galloway previously. We understood and accepted that the Dumfries station in itself had far too many capabilities, so much so that you couldn't, no one individual group of fire crews could maintain that level of competencies across such a wide range of specialisms. For example, urban search and rescue, water rescue, height rescue, and the other functions that they had just from as a competent firefighting resource. So that was accepted, and we had to rationalise the specialist provisions that were put onto Dumfries. However, we are maintaining 2 water rescue resources in the Dumfries and Galloway area. One will be Dumfries Station itself, which will have an enhanced capability and also maintain the provision in Annan.
Just to check, Chairman, that there's still a capability in Annan for the water rescue.
That's correct.
Okay. Ian?
Thank you, Chairman. It's also in relation to special services, but more in a way of thanks. I was at a scene of flooding last week, towards the end of last week, when 3 properties were affected in Polnaki. The local team, Derek Cowan, I'm not sure the Derek Rang and his team came out, and I cannot commend them high enough for the way that they dealt with the incident itself. Got rid of the most of the water, although it was still coming in for a bit, and the way they dealt with the public that were there. So would you please pass on my thanks for that?
Thank you, Councillor. I will do that. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian. Craig?
Thank you, Chair. It's in regard to the malicious false alarms, Alan, and when you first looked at the report, it did raise a concern, but I note the explanation in the commentary, and hopefully that seems to be, the remedial action you're taking there seems to be having an effect, as Q2 figures show there. But my question to do with that was, when the malicious calls come in like that, are you obliged to send out an appliance to every one of these calls? Or do you recognise through the call centre that it is a malicious call? And then a second part to that, geographically, whereabouts in the region were these coming from?
In relation to malicious calls, when a call comes in, our call handlers are trained to challenge, and it's a call challenging policy. So we will actively question if the call handler sense that it's maybe a malicious call. A child, as an example, they may question further to try and elicit a better understanding of the situation. If there is any doubt that that is not maybe an actual realistic call, they will mobilise an appliance. If they feel that there's any it's a malicious nature of it, or generally when we challenge, they just hang up. So we won't mobilise that because we are trying to reduce the number of blue light journeys to one for perception of in the area of there's a more problematic situation arising, and also the danger of driving under blue light conditions unnecessarily. So those for both for crews and the members of the public. So that call challenging policy previously over a number of years has driven down the number of malicious calls. In addition to that, thereafter, what would happen is we could trace calls, we link with our colleagues in the police, we can trace mobile numbers. If there's one coming constantly through the same number, we can go to the mobile phone providers and block that number. We just switch off the number. Alternatively, if it's malicious calls who are maybe setting fires as well, so it's more of a crime being committed or a more serious crime being committed, we could maybe place CCTV footage or have patrols with our colleagues in the police to apprehend. But then after the apprehension, we take it in look at the whole situation and around and deal with it appropriately, whether it's through formal, going through the court process, or alternatively it's more of an education and raising awareness issue. I don't have any particular I don't have that to hand, Councillor, the exact area that came from, but if you want, I'll get that to you out with this report.
Okay, Craig. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just a couple of questions on the equipment failure, false alarms, and I know this is this always seems to remain a bit of a challenge, just because I'm sure there's sort of technical issues as well. But I was just wondering if you can maybe expand a wee bit more in the increase in attendance is being attributable to a change in the criteria. And you know, from the narrative, I'm not really sure what that sort of is, but I mean, if you could sort of maybe expand on that, that would maybe be helpful just to help get on top of the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The reason for the rise in unwanted fire alarm systems, and as I've mentioned in the commentary, it was as anticipated, was previously in the former Strathclyde area, which, along with our own area of Dumfries and Galloway, now makes up the West Service Delivery area. In the former Strathclyde, the policy was to mobilise appliances to, if hospital had fire alarms going off, they would mobilise to the premises. We always made some sort of response. When that became problematic, we had a policy called unwanted fire alarms, called challenging. So it's on a decreasing and progressive basis, we would go out to calls if it was identify the high demand areas. Predominantly it was NHS as one of the top 10 of our building estates, given us the most numbers of unwanted fire alarms. Thereafter that, there would be processes to engage with the management teams to look at, is it the system that was maybe old or faulty? Was it the management practices that were out of kilter? And that's seen a massive, using that approach and that focus, drove down the number of unwanted fire alarm systems in the former Strathclyde. The Dumfries and Galloway model was that you previously had arrangements with some of the main occupiers and the main management teams to allow them to go and investigate the alarm in the first instance, and them to decide whether there was a further a requirement for the fire service to attend. Now, it's really just a process to establish that, because we couldn't be absolutely assured as a new service that that process was as robust as it may be. And in many ways, what is going to happen is we'll probably take a step back in Dumfries and Galloway, and then order that we can move forward. So the reason for the rise is that we've taken that policy of allowing occupiers arbitrarily just to check their own premises and make a determination whether there's a requirement for an appliance to attend or otherwise. So we are now mobilising to those premises. But now the council, the engagement and the working with the occupiers, the management team, to see whether is the alarm system requiring adjustment, is the correct sensors in the right place, is the management practices robust. But thereafter that, the service will probably very quickly move to a point where we will trust occupiers to make that determination. But it has to be constantly reviewed, because as you can imagine, if you have an agreement with a certain management team in a type of building, that needs to be constantly audited, because that management team could slip, it could change. The actual setup that was done initially may have drifted. So we have to constantly review and measure and audit that the agreement that we're put in place to allow an occupier to make a decision. We give them a couple of minutes, as an example, to check out if they could say, look, it's a false alarm, or it was posted, set a detector off. We would give them that comfort. Other than that time scale, we would then just reactivate and send an appliance out.
Okay, Stephen.
Thanks again. No, thanks for that explanation. So it's almost like a recalibrating across the whole area. I'm just wondering, from a council's perspective, if we would have another view of that in an integrated model where NHS and council will be sort of sharing buildings, effectively, I suppose, in terms of how we look at that in the future. The other thing was deliberate secondary fires. It looks as if, and this is where, again, your explanation would be helpful, it looks as if there's a beginnings of a trend on the up for deliberate secondary fires. It could well be that that's not enough to be a pattern as yet, but I mean, is there any explanation for the sort of rise since Q2 in the previous year?
Chair, that one's quite simple. It's a hot summer, and it's as simplistic as that. The previous years were quite damp, and we were lucky. Those numbers are still, although they're a rise in Dumfries and Galloway, they are minuscule given the huge territory that we have. And it was as simplistic as that. It was a hot summer and grass was getting ignited, some rubbish fires were getting ignited. So it's simplistic as that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. I think it's just hard to imagine hot, dry days at this current time, so it's maybe I've forgotten what it was like, so thanks.
Thanks, David. Graham?
Thanks, Chair. 2 points to my question. First one is, in your summing up to Councillor Brodie, you said there was going to be there is a water rescue facility in Annan, and you were bringing one to Dumfries, but you didn't confirm that there's still one in Newton Stewart. That's the first bit of the question. Could you confirm that there is one in Newton Stewart and that's not the one you're taking to Dumfries? And the second point is that aerial rescue pump, there was an incident in Stranraer, I suppose it's 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when one of the boats couldn't get into the harbour, couldn't dock properly, and we had to bring an aerial thing in to lift the folk off and bring them ashore. And it had to come from Dumfries. And subsequent to that, I understood that we had purchased a kind of dodgy one from Clickmannanshire or something like that for £1. There's no sign of that being based in Stranraer. I mean, it's 75 miles from Dumfries to Stranraer, and it's a long. The west feels a wee bit remote, and we've still got 2 ferry companies operating in the Stranraer area. I just wondered if we still had one in Stranraer, and if you missed it out of this, or if we'd got rid of the dodgy one, or what has happened to it.
Chair, I think I need a correction. The Newton Stewart Water Rescue is the provision that we maintained along with Dumfries, and it will be the Annan one that is gradually reduced. So that's just to make an agreement on that one. With regard to High Reach, the appliance that he previously bought, is my understanding, in previous Dumfries and Galloway Fire and Rescue Service, had issues with its roadworthiness. If it was fully occupied and fully populated, so it was over the weight, reductions in its capability were undertaken to allow it to be roadworthy, but that was diminishing the capability of the overall appliance. And over the last maybe year or so, it was becoming very, very problematic, and it was always at workshops for repair, so it was very, very costly, and it was taking a provision away from Dumfries. We introduced a new aerial combined rescue appliance and aerial platform into Dumfries. The training is well completed now, and that appliance is on the run in Dumfries and Galloway. At the same time, we looked at the provision for Stranraer in terms of High Reach, and the evidence, the historical data, the requirement and the demand for it didn't give us the need, and we made the judgment call that that wasn't needed in that area, and it was purely demand-led and evidence-based.
So we don't have one in Stranraer in the west. We're not likely to get one because on the evidence that you people have got. The people in the west might take more convincing than that. But anyway, that's up to you to convince them.
That was also undertaken in the specialist appliance review, but just to confirm, there is no High Reach appliance in the west, and it probably won't be one provided.
I know that's what you want to hear, Graham, but Councillor Grimm?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Sorry I was late. There was 2 fire tenders in Buccleuch Street. I couldn't get by them outside Barber's Furniture Store. Were we called upon to assist in across the border at the weekend?
No.
No. I'd just like to say that the Nith Inshore Rescue boat was the first one in Carlisle, the first one that appeared in the scene. And when I watched Border TV and BBC, there was nothing said about that. I think it's dreadful that, I mean, these guys are giving their all for free, doing 2 shifts, and no mention of the fact that they were there. So, just thought I'd like to put that on record.
Thanks, Jack. That's been noted. Graham?
Yep. Just a quick general question. Are you able to recruit sufficient officers to maintain the level of service that we have in Dumfries and Galloway at the moment?
In certain areas like the whole of Scotland and the rest of the UK, Dumfries and Galloway area being particularly populated by retained, which is part-time firefighters, certain areas are more difficult than others to recruit from. The reasons,
We'll start with Drumore.
well, we've just recently had a recruitment campaign where we identified 4 potential candidates for Drumore. They've gone through the recruitment process, but unfortunately, my understanding is at the time only 2 turned up for the actual assessment. So again, whether that, even though we still progressed those 2, so they are still going through the recruitment process, whether they will give us a viable crew to actually maintain an appliance down there, but that is the aspiration, that all of our stations will be fully crewed to the maximum levels to provide that level of security and service provision across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway.
Were you one of the 4, Graham? Were you one of the 4? Members ready to go? Recommend? Sorry, Ronnie.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. The first one follows on behind what Graham was saying about the retained officers. And you mentioned earlier about the training, some of the complex stuff at Dumfries. Not every firefighter could retain that wide knowledge. If we're going to lose the water capability in Annan, would the retained guys still get the training in that so that they still keep their local knowledge and stuff? No, so that's going to fall off. So in the retained service, they have to retain a certain level to be competent. In this new big world, how's that done now? Because when there were specialisms, is it still as broad as it was?
Part of that review that was undertaken for the whole of Scotland was to try as much as we can to take the onus off our retained colleagues, so that they only had the core firefighting capabilities required of their risk profile for their particular area to contend with. But we also understood that in certain areas that was the way things were done. The retained members had additional training, there was additional provision, and they were required in legacy services to perform additional specialist functions on behalf of the fire and rescue services at that time. So that review has taken place. We've taken as much as we can off the retained duty systems and put it and spread it out amongst a much wider whole-time colleagues across the rest of Scotland. However, in Dumfries and Galloway, there is still a requirement, and I suppose that's a recognition of the skill sets of some of the crews in Dumfries and Galloway, that they can take on that other specialist function. So command and control is one example of a retained an additional retained specialism in Dumfries and Galloway and the water rescue.
Thanks, Chair. The reason I asked that question was, in Dumfries and Galloway, we rely heavily on the retained. It's not like anywhere else. We rely heavily on them. So the fact that they're still getting their training and keeping their competencies is reassuring. Can I ask that? It's parochial, but I'll link it into sort of a general question. There was a fire in Annan, was it last week, I think, and the non-fatality, somebody was rescued. The reason I asked that is it should be deemed as a vulnerable person. Sorry, they would be deemed as a vulnerable person and lives in an RSL house. And I just wondered, through the partnership work, and how better we could support vulnerable people so there's no fires. I know that was a thing we did years ago. I just wondered, because it's not explicit in the reports now, how we identify and support people who are vulnerable, especially in private, in the renting sector.
It depends, and it really is on a multi-agency basis how people's vulnerabilities come to the fore. We are moving in a direction where we're speaking to social workers, we're looking at care and repair teams, we are looking at adult drugs partnerships, and closer working arrangements allow, no matter who goes over the door of that individual, that they become the eyes for all agencies. So if the fire service goes through a door for whatever reason for a home fire safety visit, if that's appropriate, and we see malpractice or maltreatment of kids, or we see elderly, frail people who are needing support, those referral pathways should be strengthened to make sure that those other agencies who have primacy for that particular condition are alerted in the first instance and hopefully take action thereafter. But that is reciprocal as well. So we hope that when fire service, if anybody who's on a vulnerable register for any particular agency, whether it be for alcohol or mental health issues, that those referral pathways will speak to fire and allow us the chance to engage with that individual, to assess their home, to give them advice, education, and the provision of any remedial furnishings, bedding, detection, or processes or systems that we feel required to keep them safe. Unfortunately, the vast majority, there is a hard-to-reach group that just don't come onto our radar, so we don't, one, become informed of them, or they're just under everybody's radar. So the first thing we do when there is a fire is undertake a case review to find out who knew about this, were they on anybody's radar, and a lot of the times people are just not, they've not came above that, the threshold to be on any agency's particular radar. But when that is done, there's obviously questions being asked. If one agency knew, why wasn't another agency informed? And it's really just a case of putting in place the systems and the processes to allow that joined up approach, multi-agency approach, and the referral pathways to enable the action to be taken.
Members ready to go to recommendations? 2.1, scrutinise the performance report from Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for Dumfries and Galloway from 1st April 2015 to 30 September 2015 as detailed in Appendix 1. Agreed? And for note the public performance report 2014-2015 for Scottish Fire and Rescue Service in Dumfries and Galloway as an Appendix 2. Noted? Thank you very much. Thanks very much for the report, Al. Item 5 on the agenda, Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 6 months performance update, 1st April 2015 to 30 September 2015. Report by Director of Communities. This report presents the Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 6 months performance update for 1st April 2015 to 30 September 2015. Mike Leslie, Local Commander, is present from Police Scotland to present and answer members' queries. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. You've basically covered the front page, so I'll go straight into performance data. What I would say is that Inspector Neil Hewitson is here with me today from the local roads policing unit. The purpose of that is that at the last meeting we indicated on behalf of V Division that we'd like to try and bring some more context to the meeting so that you can understand some of the challenges that the division is facing, the local policing operation. So as a consequence of that, Neil's provided a report here, and following myself, will give some detail on the issues that are impacting on us in relation to roads policing, in particular the crash data, the increase in fatal road traffic crashes, etc., etc. So that I won't get into any detail, members, with that, if that's okay. I'll allow that Neil to cover that in his report. So if we go to the policing plan, priority antisocial behaviour, including alcohol-related violence. Our aim is to reduce antisocial behaviour throughout Dumfries and Galloway by working with partner agencies in the community to prevent, tackle and reduce antisocial behaviour crimes and offences. Very pleasing to note that in the first 6 months of the reporting year, that Group 1 violent crime is down 14.5% and the detection rate is up 0.8%. That reflects the division's commitment to making Dumfries and Galloway a safe place to live and work. Group 1 crime obviously covers serious assaults, it covers homicide, murder, etc. We in the division have, to give you some more context on that, we have got a murder on our books, an allegation of murder which appeared from a previous year. It goes back to legacy Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary. It's been through the initial reporting to the Crown, and that case is now pending with the court system. So that does appear, and members will be aware of the conviction last week for a culpable homicide in the High Court and an individual receiving 4.5 years imprisonment at the High Court following an incident in High Street, Dumfries, earlier on in the year. So it's a pleasing picture in terms of Group 1, but what I wanted to do was to give members full flavour of what we're experiencing, and by that's why I put in the next section, which is to try and explain to you where we are with common assaults. Common assaults has seen an increase on the previous year, and probably try and provide some context round about that so we fully understand it.
In the last year of Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary 2012-13, the old legacy force had the lowest number of common assaults in recent years, in the last 5 years. The first year of Police Scotland, the number of common assaults increased significantly, and a lot of that was down to domestic abuse, etc. Then in 14-15, members remember when I reported in April that in June, it was down last year, so it's year on year. So we're seeing a spike this year, but it is up on the 5-year average. And I've tried to provide some context in relation to that, and you'll see that Galloway Area Command has seen the biggest increase in common assaults. They had, last year, to be fair, they had a significant reduction, but this year it's up significantly. And you can see I provided some context round about that in terms of what's at play here. Domestic incidents are up. We've also seen an increase in violence related to licensed premises. We have work ongoing with the Council's licensing department in relation to licensed premises, and that's trying to address some of the concerns which I'll probably touch on later in the report about front loading, and alcohol is really behind, fair to say, a lot of this, and I'll come back to that. We had a bad start to the year with common assaults. I think I mentioned that in June. The first month, Alan touched on it, the weather was very good. We had a hot first 6 weeks, and alcohol consumption was significantly up, in my opinion, and that had a significant impact on the number of common assaults. So we got off to a bad start at the very start of the year, and in my opinion, and to be fair, when you looked at it in terms of common assaults across Scotland, the west coast of Scotland, there was a pattern there, and it was what was happening in Dumfries and Galloway V Division was reflected elsewhere on the west coast. So we were seeing it, and it was related to alcohol. Some of the context as well, we've had quite a few issues in terms of care homes for children, in particular privately run care homes, of which there's a number in the region, and local authority care homes. And we've had a number of children charged with common assault. One particular incident, we've had a child that's been charged now with 30 common assaults. And that we don't want to criminalise any children, but just to try and give you a flavour for that. As a consequence of that, we're working quite in some detail and some depth closely with the Care Inspectorate. Care Inspectorate were down here last week, and we met with senior officials from there. There was also a meeting between the Care Inspectorate and local care providers. So we had local authority and with private care providers at a meeting with the Care Inspectorate last week to try and discuss how we can improve the situation. And even all the private care providers in the region turned up for that meeting bar too. So it was an extremely good response. So that kind of gives you a flavour for that. What are we doing about it? We've also got what we call a gold group, which is like a grip meeting. And at that meeting, we go into it in some detail to try and establish, look, what's at play here? Why is common assaults up? What can we do as part of a violence reduction strategy? So we've got a lot of work ongoing. It's pretty self-explanatory in that report about targeting offenders. We know for a fact that in terms of robbery, serious assaults, common assaults, that when certain individuals get out of prison, then they can have a significant impact on local communities. So to keep communities safe, we have a process that we go through. We get early notification that they're coming out, and we quite often serve letters on them. And that letter's putting a line in the sand with them. And that's telling them, in no uncertain terms, that if we get evidence, we will incarcerate them, and we'll put them to the court, and we'll ask for very strong bail conditions to be put on them. So that's part of that, kind of give you a flavour for that violence reduction strategy that's chaired. The Gold Group's chaired by Superintendent Stephen Lowther, and there's a lot of work going into that. Then touch on, if we're going to actually disorder itself, members will see, I should actually just mention previously about the alcohol consumption, a number of stop search in relation to positive results for that. We did in previous years have, and Councillor Groom will be aware of this, a problem down in the White Sands. We've been quite proactive with that, and I think because we've had some positive response from that positive action, that's had an impact. And you'll see that Nissdale is down quite significantly in terms of disorder, antisocial behaviour. So that's an improving picture. If I then move on to stop search, you will see that I put in there a section to try and explain where we are with stop search, following reviews by HMICS, by SPA and Police Scotland, to be fair. There is new criteria, there's a new system to make it more accurate, so you'll see the figures are different to where they had been previously. They're significantly down. But that is still, what I would say is there's still some very positive results there. You will see that we are running a crime car on the motorway, and as a consequence of stop search, there's been some very positive results under that legislation. You will see there that we've had a number of drug seizures. There's one that's not added to there that came in last week. We got a kilo of cocaine off the motorway last week with a street value of £65,000. So again, another positive result. I've made mention of the fact that we, during the Wickerman Festival, were quite proactive at the point of entry with stop search legislation under the Misuse of Drugs Act, and that resulted in a number of positive results, which ultimately, hopefully, make the event safer. Priority substance misuse, members will see that we are down in terms of drugs deaths in comparison with the previous year. Obviously, even though there's been 5, that's 5 too many, there's a lot of proactive work getting done on the seizures there, and we are waiting toxicology results in relation to others. I would make mention of, you go into the actual drug supply figures, you will see that they're up from 88 in the same period last year to 109 for the division in this year, and you'll see that Annandale and Eskdale is up 10 from 24 to 34. Neil would give you more information on that, but that's basically down to the crime car that's running the motorway, and I just touched on it and the significant results that they're achieving. And also, again, we've been very proactive across the region in terms of drug supply because of the impact that it has. I was looking at the figures this morning to try and give you by way of an update of where we are right now. So we've got 137 detections as of this morning, which is obviously up on 109 from the previous year. I should explain, I've got it in bold and I explain it at every meeting, that there is an anomaly in the ward structure here in the performance data, because you will go through the figures and think, well, they don't really add up, and that's because of the Abbey ward is part of Nissdale and the Stewartry, so there is that slight technicality there that I always remind members of. Group 3 crime, you can see that we have had an increase, which is crimes of dishonesty. The trend there is in relation to what we're seeing is supermarkets being targeted by travelling criminals. Annan and Dumfries in particular have been the subject of travelling criminals coming into the region from quite afar. We've had a number of detections, and the detection rate for shoplifting is at over 80% right now, so there's been a number of positive results there. And we, in fact, last week we arrested one individual going out of a supermarket wearing a pair of shoes that she had not purchased when she was from south of the border again. So again, we're working on a number of positive lines there. There's also, just to mention, that we've funded this new radio system for Dumfries Borough, which will assist with the kind of proactive work there about getting the word out when we know that there's active shoplifters coming into the region. It just enables us to get the message out quicker and a lot cleaner, so that people can be more proactive. For members of Galloway, they may be aware that we had a spate of car crime in Stranraer at the start of the recording year. One individual is now incarcerated, serving a custodial sentence for that. Members will also be aware that in the last month, we have had a number of house break-ins in the region, predominantly in the Stewartry and in Dumfries. One individual was arrested last week, is on petition, on remand, Dumfries Prison now, on allegations relating to house break-ins in Dumfries during daylight hours. And we have an ongoing case, which I cannot go into for obvious reasons, but in terms of the house break-ins in the Stewartry, we are working on that just now, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to get a positive message to members about that very soon. So that's obviously very, very, very pleasing. What I would say is, in terms of the breaks that we got in the Stewartry and in Dumfries, it was down to members of the public being vigilant, making that call, telling us that they'd seen something that they were unhappy about, and that allowed us to respond. And that, at the end of the day, yes, we'll be out there stopping cars and checking people, but it's the public that will really help us to nail it and get these people, prevent the crime and keep the area safe. So that's really Group 3 crime. You'll see hate crime is actually the detection rate. It's shown there as of the first 6 months has been down slightly on last year, but still at 90.6%, which is the highest detection rate in Scotland. I can tell you right now, as of this morning, it's at 95.9, which is, we've got 3 outstanding cases for the whole region for the first 9 months, basically, of the reporting period. I just want, again, to priority in public protection, I just want to go into the alcohol thing again, and you'll see I've touched on it there, that we are experiencing this front loading by people, predominantly younger people, and you'll see that the age group there that I've highlighted, that when we do a problem profile, we see the kind of trend that's happening, and that, in my opinion, was a contributing factor in the culpable homicide that we had, and other violence that we're seeing in the region. And we're trying to be proactive with as I say, the licensing in the region. We're also working very hard with Pub Watch to try and get these people banned from the premises, because there is a lot of repeat offenders out there. So, in my opinion, 30 years service, over 30 years service now, I've seen it where it was predominantly weekends, but what we're starting to experience now is the availability of alcohol, and where it was predominantly weekends, it no longer is. We're getting it during the week. When you've got a situation where you've had some of the stuff that we're experiencing, then there clearly is something. People can go out and socialise and have a drink and have a good time, but people going out to socialise to get drunk and then starting to get involved in some of the antics they're getting involved in, that's a real concern. So for me, it's not just happening in Dumfries and Galloway. There's a cultural thing here that, in my opinion, Scotland's going to have to, I think we should be addressing. And I'm certainly flagging it up to my gaffers and saying to them, if you want to fix demand reduction, if you want to have an impact on keeping communities safer and going to the next stage, we need to do something about the alcohol, because it's fueling a lot of what's happening out there. So I just make that point. As I say, I've certainly been raising it. I was speaking to ACC Thompson, former divisional commander here, and about how we as Police Scotland need to take that, we need to take it to the Scottish Government, we need to raise it at the divisional commanders' meetings and have that discussion, because I haven't spoken to other divisional commanders, other chief superintendents, they're telling us the same thing. They're dealing with it weekends, and we come in on a Monday morning, you see Davy McCallum's articles recently in the Free Press, that were in the Courier, that were in local papers about the impact alcohol is having on local communities and the violence out there. So I highlight that to you. One other couple of points I just want to highlight is you would see when I talked about youth reporting, youth offending, and I talked about care homes, we have seen a significant increase, a 48% increase in youth offending the first 6 months, the recording year in comparison with the previous year. I've asked that internally, from a V Division Police Scotland perspective, that we look at how the division deals with youth offending, to go back and see how we dealt with under the old legacy arrangements, and to identify any room for improvement. So some of you were aware Inspector Rory Kildew. Rory's been tasked with looking at that, try and get a fix on, from internally from a V Division perspective and a policing perspective, what's at play here. We're getting a problem profile done so we can better understand what's behind that. When you see that figure, that's certainly a concern to me, because I don't want to be criminalising any kids, period. But we certainly need to kind of better understand that and see what we can do about it. Going on to public protection, it's all pretty self-explanatory. You'll see there's been a decrease in domestic abuse. That's on page 62. There's a lot of good work getting done there. The council has been very good in giving us funding for a MATAC, a multi-agency tasking and coordinating administrator, and they've also been very good at giving us money for an advocacy worker, and that's about providing support. We've got a 2-year contract for both. That's about giving support to victims of domestic abuse, because it releases the police officers to get on with the investigative side and allows the advocacy worker to refer them to various agencies, and also it allows the administrator, gives us that kind of admin support. So that's pretty, and you'll see I've highlighted a couple of cases there, one from Annan that was recently went through the system, and the results that were achieved there. Violent crime, robberies are down. I've touched on that. The table is pretty self-explanatory. Members will obviously see that there has been an increase in sexual crime group 2 offences, and that some of that's attributable to, we're seeing an increase in historical crimes being reported. We have some cases from the Wigton area that have generated a number of allegations. We're seeing one in Nissdale where it's allegations going back 40 years. That people have now got the confidence to come forward and make that complaint, and have confidence that the police will take it seriously. And it's in the back of some of the reporting that you've seen nationally and some of the work that's been ongoing there. The other kind of concern that you're seeing now is kids, again, using social media, and some of the things that they're getting up to, and just being very innocent, not understanding, and also being targeted by groups when they're on the internet, and they're very innocent. You'll also be aware that we're running a number of local initiatives, and their purpose of those local initiatives is to try and raise awareness with kids about what happens out there, and about, we're trying to obviously educate the parents as well, because some of them are completely unsighted, and as you know, the kids are far more advanced when it comes to technology than ourselves, and they're on all these social media websites, and they can run, I can barely run one at a time. These kids can run 3, 4, 5 and still be playing being on the Xbox, playing a game at the same time while they're communicating with kids, so other kids and other individuals. So that's clearly working on that. And you'll see, talked about school-based officers. We're trying to be proactive, and all the recent work that was ongoing with the community-based officers in the region. I'm not going to touch on the roads policing because Neil will go into that in more detail. You will see under priority of terrorism that the number of logs has went down. The context round about that is we had, you may remember, members, that we had a march here in 14, in the previous reporting year, the Scottish Defence League were here. It was a pretty big gig, and there was obviously opposition to that, and that generated a lot of logs. There was people arrested, went to court, there was various logs in for that, etc. And we also had an individual in the region for a period of time that was of interest that generated quite a few logs, and that's the reason that you're seeing that kind of reduction there, to give you some context. And also what I would do is I would praise Chris Lyne, who's he's the local chair of the local contest group, who's from the NHS, senior manager there, and it just gives us that independence and allows, you know, partners to, it's not just the police that are chairing these meetings and taking them forward. Chris is doing a cracking job there on that group. And I'll finish off with Mr. Ogilvy's always got a point on in its complaints about the police. You'll see, it's pleasing to see that we're down 5.8% on the previous reporting period, while Scotland is up. There's no officer suspended right now in the division, which is also good news. And you'll see that in terms of allegations, we're down from 160 to 126 the same period last year. So again, that's very positive. The report, members, as you'll see, I kind of started this off at the last meeting, tried to provide you with a lot of context. I would rather just give you the context and then give you the data after it, because I think you're probably more interested in that, so I can explain to you what's at play. So that's the reason for, it's quite a lengthy report, there's a lot of information in there, and it's just trying to make sure it gives you the data that you need, the information that you need to understand what the pressures are and what's happening in the region. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mike, for that comprehensive report. Open to members. Richard?
Yeah, I think on the question of the increasing amount of alcohol available for young people, obviously it's not going to be solved by a top-down solution from Police Scotland, but it needs a multidisciplinary approach at the local grassroots level. What are the community engagement programs that Police Scotland are involved in at the moment?
Yeah, but we're running an operation now called Operation Resolve, and that operation is basically being run by the community section, and it's all about targeting youth offending where we think it's alcohol related. We recently had resources coming down from the Central Belt to assist us with it. You may recall that 5 years ago, we had a kind of spike in this at that time, and we brought youths in who'd been consuming alcohol, who were underage, brought them to the Oasis Centre, and then brought the parents in. That we've been doing that again. So again, we've been bringing them in, taking them to the Oasis Centre. We've also been lettering parents and trying to explain to them, you know, because there is a cultural issue here. But you're right, sir. It's much broader than enforcement. It's about trying to change culture, and we're certainly working with. Stephen Lowther goes to the meetings with the social work department, as does David McCallum, where we're working with them on youth issues, etc. And that for me is the key to the whole thing. But there is a culture out there where the parents now seem to think it's, in my opinion, it's more acceptable to for children to consume alcohol, and we have had instances where you get functions in licensed premises to celebrate a kid being 18. And we had one recently in Dumfries, and that led to some angst in the street when you've got 100 other youths trying to get into that function. And the disorder that came out of that. But the answer to your question is no, we can't fix it on our own. We're running Operation Resolve. We're trying to work with the schools as well, but it's much broader than that.
Yes, Richard.
Yeah, obviously it's probably a division-wide problem and affect Annan as well. So I think we need a sort of joint approach to that across the division with other agencies. The feedback I'm getting from Annan Police is that there are less community patrols in the area. Do you think that could be a factor in this? Could it be a factor in other things like the increase in property related to crime?
In my opinion, we're bringing resource down from the centre, and they've been in Annan proactive unit and have been doing anti-crime patrols. We've tried to focus in on, yes, we have had an issue in Annan. There's a number of youths being charged and been reported for that. In terms of the visibility, I'm sure the Annan Area Committee is coming up next week, and I'll certainly speak with, as far as I'm aware, Stephen Wilson, the local community sergeant, is doing a lot of work down there to try and work proactively to try and get in about the causes as opposed to us dealing with the symptoms. But there has been a lot of work done. There's a bid in this week for resource to come down to go to Annan from the centre to assist with visibility. So it's an ongoing, it's trying to get to the nub of it, but we won't fix it purely from an enforcement. And I'll get back to the point, it's not just a problem in Dumfries and Galloway. This is a problem across Scotland. So it's going to have to be a Scottish-wide, government-led, in my opinion, solution to this.
Carry on, Richard.
There was a trial of body cams in the Dumfries and Annan, and it seems to have ended. Now, how did the trial go? Something in the paper last week that the cameras had been withdrawn, and they're now sitting in a cupboard somewhere, apparently. Could you?
Yeah, I mean, the cameras were rolled out initially, and we had found them beneficial. It was all part of the violence reduction strategy that I was talking about earlier. However, Police Scotland is looking at national policy, and to make sure that national policy and process is aligned across Scotland, the direction came that we should remove them for the time being. They're not being moved. I've seen it reported locally that they've been taken back to the centre. That's not the case. They're not getting used elsewhere. They've been withdrawn unilaterally till we get agreement, or the centre has a policy agreed on their deployment.
Finally, on that point, just finally on the point, Chairman, I think we should maybe pass the message on to Police Scotland that instead of sitting in a cupboard somewhere, that you should be allowed to continue your trial and use the cameras, because there's no point sitting in the cupboard. And another point is that I think Police Scotland were asked for a comment from the local press last week, and they failed to respond in the time that they said they would. I think it's only in the last day that they have got back to them. So it's something maybe you could say that we should be using these body cameras because they're giving the public safety and they're giving the police safety. And it seems that that we shouldn't be hidebound by national policies at a local level. We should be doing what's best for the people of Dumfries and Annan.
Yeah, your point's noted, sir, and I'll take that on board. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Ian?
Thank you, Mike. It's on page 59. It's pleasing to see the reduction in drugs death from 8 to 5, although there does seem to be a wee bit conflict with the narrative below, where it says there are a reduction of 2, 5 from 8, I mean 3 to me. But in addition to that, and this is anecdotal certainly, but there does seem to be an increase in methadone usage. And I appreciate it's not a police responsibility, but it might be good to have a link from that from the NHS, along with drugs deaths in the future.
There's certainly a drugs death group, which the decision of whether or not a death is down to drugs is not down to the police. There's a multi-agency group that looks at that and looks at methadone, and obviously we've got Scott Jarden does a lot of proactive work on the preventative side, which is half funded. Methadone has always been and continues to be an issue, because what you normally find is that when the toxicology results come back, it's not just the one substance, as you know, that's been a contributory factor, or the sole contributory factor. It's normally a cocktail, and yeah, I mean, I'll take that back with Scott Jarden and try and get you some more detail on that, but I know there's a bit of work ongoing. The figures will be down to, you're right, that's a mistake on my part, so I've compiled the report, so apologies. Maths was never my strong point at school, I have to say. So.
Okay, Craig?
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I appreciate you've gone into some depth with your concerns on the alcohol and its relation with the the common assaults and the violent crimes, and also in associating with the youth crime involvement there. But in the detections for consuming alcohol in a public place, we're down by 61%. And to me, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between what you've been saying and then the figures that you show here. Now, I appreciate with stop and search will have an issue relating to that. And of course, we all understand that alcohol consumed in private properties and households, you've no jurisdiction on that at all. But to me, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect. If we're down 61% in stop and search and detections for consuming alcohol in a public place, and yet there's such an emphasis on the alcohol-related crimes through common assaults and things. To me, there just seems to be a bit of a disconnect. I mean, we all know with the common ridings and the galas, etc., that we have, they're big public events, and there will be consumption there, which I know in some cases there's a bylaw that allows that to happen, so that might have an effect on that. But to me, there just seems to be a bit of a disconnect between the whole issue there.
I mean, the bottom line is that alcohol consumption and the violence related to it, a fair percentage of that is in private places. You're getting it in dwellings, etc. So it's not just it's not just out in the street. The violence that we're experiencing on the street, a lot of it is related to the consumption inside licensed premises, or it's the violence is happening in licensed premises, or the example recently from the culpable homicide is that you have an incident like that outside one licensed premises, and then it spills over into another licensed premises and happens inside again within 5 minutes, where there's another further 2 assaults. So a lot of it is not happening out there in terms of people actually carrying alcohol on them. It's actually about private space, and it's about inside licensed premises and on the outskirts of licensed premises where it's happening, because people, what they're doing is they're front loading. They're consuming lots of alcohol, a lot of them, before they even go out. So they're doing it in private premises, and I think that's why we're seeing this increase as well inside dwellings, etc., because of that front loading impact. Another point, an anomaly, is with the stop search. We no longer include the seizure of alcohol in the stop search figures. That's been removed from, because it was having such an impact in the past. So that's not there. The youth issue, we did have a big problem on the White Sands previously, and that made a big contribution towards the figures that we had in the previous year. That's now moved on, and in terms of the violence, the disorder, it's mostly relating to, a lot of people dispose of the alcohol before we even get there, because they know that the police are coming, if you look at the Nunham situation, etc. So, yes, those figures are down, but I don't see that as being, it's not as significant as it may seem on the face of it, as it actually is.
Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. It's a similar vein. In terms of confession time, one of my few leisure activities is to take part in a pub quiz, and as I sit there sipping my soft drink prior to going home to New Abbey, driving home, I would say that what I'm saying is I've been around a few pubs, but and it seems to me that most of them run a tight ship. And so if some individual front loads and presents in the pub, I think in most cases the host would be quite strict about serving. Would that be the case? And if it is the case, can we not say that maybe the damage has already been done prior to the individual leaving the house and in a drunken state? So it's a difficult problem, and don't know what we can do about it in the short term. Would that be a fair comment?
Well, the bottom line is on the onus of the licence holder not to serve people that are drunk. That's the bottom line. And that's what they're doing, some of them. Now, I'm not trying to be a spoil sport. The vast majority of licensed premises, the vast majority of people who consume alcohol want to go out to have a drink and socialise. And yes, they are. But we know the licensed premises in Dumfries and Galloway that are causing us a concern. And those licensed premises in Dumfries and Galloway that are causing us a concern are currently subject to various reports that are engagement between ourselves and the council in terms of licensing. My own take on it is I tend to think that the inspectorates here, that the legislation's too weak. It's not as strong as it was before. So, and the options there for doing something about it are not as strong as what they used to be. So the onus is on the licence holder and his staff to ensure that when someone enters their premises, they're not giving them alcohol if they're already drunk. And what our experience is, what we're seeing is that's happening in some premises.
I may be fortunate in that the premises I know best appear to be quite diligent in refusing to serve drunken customers, but of course I hear what you're saying and I take it on board.
Ronnie?
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. I just want to say it was a very good report, and the fact that you've talked us through it saved us a lot of questions. However, I've got a few. In the next report, one thing it doesn't mention is resources. Now, I know it's National Police Force, but it'll be allocated a percentage of core staff, and we don't seem to have that information anymore. But going back to what you were saying about the particular issue in Annan, I had a meeting with Steve Wilson and the community safety guy, Davey. I've got his name now, that's terrible. Anyway, just to see if there's anything that, as councillors, what we could do. And the community safety team and the police got together and had a high profile. I haven't had any more reports about the congregation of 20 to 30 youngsters up in certain parts of Annan, so that's been effective, I think. Time will tell, but if you've got something further planned. The other thing I was going to say was the Community Justice Bill is going through the Scottish Parliament at the moment, I think that's what it's called anyway, which looks at stop and search. And there was a very interesting intervention there from somebody that's less famous now. But they're looking to change that, so that may have an impact on your statistics if it ever comes through. Going back to the body cams, and it's interesting that you read in the press and people quote the press, and they're the ones that's actually in the press. So, it's a strange thing. I didn't know about it until I read the Annan paper last week. But what I've found out is that the community wardens have got body cams. Is that a different kind of body cam, or is it usable? Is it legal? Because if you're experiencing, as it was reported in the press, regulatory or licensing issues, whatever it was, the wardens seemingly, if they've got them, have cured that problem.
Yeah, the number of points there. In terms of resourcing, our resourcing today is the same as it was when the creation of V-Division back in the 1st of April 2013. So it's still sitting at, I think it's 353 for localised policing, so that hasn't changed. Annan, yeah, it's a bit like Dumfries 5 years ago, where you can get, and this is why I'm trying to just review youth offending, where you can get a small group of people who can have a big impact on the local community, and it's trying to focus in on them and do, not just from an enforcement perspective, but from, you talked about Stevie Wilson. So I think what we've done is, in terms of that group, we've had some impact there. Yes, there are some people have been charged, but also that kind of wider work with the schools, etc., and the community-based officers, because there's some good people down there. Stevie Wilson's a good sergeant who's trying to work hard there to try and look at not just us dealing with causation, the symptoms all the time, but again about the causation factors. Stop and search. From a V-Division perspective, we kind of operate the philosophy that we had under Legacy Dumfries and Galloway, which we always was right people, right place, right time. We never had huge numbers. Never. We had the lowest numbers in Scotland because we focused in on who are the individuals that are causing us a problem, what's the intelligence telling us, and we'll go after them. So that was never part of what we tried. We retained that philosophy down here. The community wardens is a good point. Yeah, I was at the antisocial behaviour Councillor Ogilvie at the workshop 2 weeks ago, and yeah, they were demonstrated to me by a special constable who was there. Obviously, the council are deploying them with the wardens. I'm not sure about in terms of evidence gathering for in relation to what they're dealing with, but it's a national policy direction we've had is that until we get it agreed nationally, then they've been removed. And once that is agreed, and hopefully that'll be done very quickly, because I would like to see them back out there, that'll happen.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions just on the report. So, although your explanations have been really helpful, and as Ronnie said, it's reduced the number of questions we probably need to ask. First one, just on the alcohol issue. I mean, I think this is obviously it's a very complex issue, and you spoke a bit about front loading. I'm just wondering what a solution sort of looks like in terms of national and local pressure being put on how we approach alcohol, our relationship with alcohol. I noticed that the terrorism priority has a sort of contest model, which challenges the ideology that supports terrorism. I'm just wondering if there's a similar think tank looking at challenging the ideology that promotes alcohol consumption. I'm not saying that alcohol consumption is something that we should outlaw, but I think there's a sort of recognition that it can be promoted sometimes over and above what people would be safe with consuming, because we know that it affects decision making as soon as you start drinking. And then locally, are we able to work our licensing boards better so that we can look at over provision, because obviously the problem's happening before people reach licensed premises, yet they're the sieve that catches the flack, if you like. Obviously they can continuously improve as well by working with other agencies, but sometimes they're like the NHS of the drinking problem, if you like, because they're the ones that are dealing with the problem as it comes through the door, or having to deal with the problem. So, but the problem seems to be starting in the home. So where's it coming from, and how's that allowed to happen? So there's obviously a bigger picture that has to be looked at. The second thing is the drugs breakdown on page 60 about supply and cultivation, etc. Again, there's probably a more sophisticated picture there that might be helpful for V Division and the members here, because obviously there's going to be some picked up on the M74. So that's a kind of supply route, whether or not it's destined for this region or not. There's also going to be local cultivation and supply, or production, if you like. What does that picture look like? And is that something that we should be able to detail more accurately so that we know what we're actually producing, or what's being produced in this region? Is that a growing trend, forgive the pun, or is it something that needs further investigation? Are we getting the clearest picture is really what I'm asking. And the other thing is partly to do with the MATAC, which seems to be a very positive, having a very positive effect, and it was obviously something the council supported as part of the reserves that we secured in 2013. Although at the time I think that was agreed as 3-year funding towards the admin and advocacy, and now notice it's a 2-year, and beyond that, how is it going to be sustained? Because obviously we're not funding it, so what's the police going to do to sustain that role, given its value? So that would be a question. And tied into that, of course, is at the same time, in 2013, we agreed to sort of look at the CCTV, upgrading the system, and look at a risk assessment centre. Obviously, a lot of agencies would benefit from that, and the police would likely be the ones operating it. So I welcome the Chair's, introduction at the start, saying that that's a report we'll have coming back to this committee. But I would be grateful to see what the police input to that is, because obviously you'd be a key partner. And obviously we took a council decision, although it did pass through the strategic partnership board at which the police sit. So just understanding that in relation to the wider CCT provision, especially in relation to what resources are available at the call centre and the area command centre, but also the likes of Ports Unit, I understand that there's a working CCTV system that the police have input to there, but is that part of the system that could be connected? And it's really just to get a sense of how we're working together, I think. And given that it's 2 years since these financial decisions were taken, should we be concerned about the lack of, or seeming lack of progress? Thank you.
Did you catch all that, Mike?
Well, there's a number of very difficult questions there, very good questions. And I'll try my best to answer them. The alcohol one, if you go back to drink driving and take it as an example where we've came, the journey we've came with drink driving in terms of legislation and the recent reduction in the limit and the impact that's had quite a significant impact. People now, culture, they're more wary in the mornings of the night before. So for me, legislation, but the alcohol thing will need, it's a national problem, in my opinion. It'll need a national solution. And it'll be about, the Scottish Government's clearly looked at the charging policy to try and have a look at that pricing. It's not one you're going to fix overnight because, as I said, it's about culture and it's about changing how people view alcohol. And it gets back to that point. Some people go out, it's good to have socialising. I like a glass of red wine, but I don't have to go out to get drunk and fight. That's the kind of distinction I make. In terms of getting back to licensing boards, as I said before, we're working quite hard with them to identify the premises that are causing us concern, cause the community a concern. And I'm sure the elected members sitting around here and the elected members on the licensing boards, they know the premises that are causing us concerns because we're speaking to them about them, and they're getting told anyway by the local community, So we're working within the current legislation to try and address, and there's a number of premises review that have been done. There's one in Dumfries that we worked quite hard with that was caused us a problem at the start of the year, and that seems to have improved. So it's trying to get them to understand about serving drunk people and what can happen thereafter. Contest and terrorism, that group just looks locally at, as I say, Chris Lyon chairs it, and it's multi-agency, and it's trying to be very, very proactive. Obviously, the threat is where it is just now, and it's we are as vigilant as we've ever been. It can only go up one other notch, and that would have a significant impact. Yeah.
It was just, I think the reason why I mentioned that is just obviously what's sauce for the goose isn't always sauce for the gander, as it were, but I think it's more that when you're challenging an ideology, and I really wanted to link it into the cultural relationship with alcohol, how we embrace or promote or acknowledge alcohol is maybe where the national driver or maybe the sort of cultural driver might need to come from in terms of how we, because I notice, and it's always with it always amuses me that when anybody talks about alcohol, they usually qualify what they're about to say with, I like a social drink as much as the next person, as if to buffer what they're about to say about the abuse of alcohol. So it's, and I'm not, I think most people would usually say that, so, but it's interesting that that's so firmly embedded in how we dialogue and discuss alcohol. But anyway, that was really what that was about.
It's where it stops being social and where it moves into the other spectrum. And it's not just us; it has an impact on. It has an impact on the criminal justice system. You look at what will happen potentially in the festive period, whether consumption goes up and the impact it'll have on the E&E ward at DGRI. And that, we know that historically that's what happens. Getting back to the drugs supply thing, yeah, we have seen an increase in cultivation, slight increase in cultivation, that's for sure, across and that has an impact because cultivation, if you even get cultivation with just a small number of plants, that goes into the drug supply charges because cultivation is part of the criteria. MATAC, yeah, technically it has to be, it's a temporary contract, so to be a temporary contract, it has to be 2 years. We did lose a year of funding to start with in terms of to get the process. Yeah, we moved out of legacy D&G. We had the money. We came into Police Scotland, and there was it took us a bit of time, longer than I'd hoped, to try and get through that to make sure that we got the recruitment process in place. We got agreement that we could move forward with it. But I find it very positive because it will have a really significant impact on the future there, having those people there. And in terms of the funding for the future, I don't know the answer to that yet, because obviously the funding's there for 2 years. It's something that we'll have to go back and have a look at, because I would hope that we'll be able to secure some centralised funding or money from somewhere to continue with that, because it will pay dividends, and it will, if you make the investment, if you give the money towards it, it will give you a bigger return at the front end in terms of how the impact it has on resources. CCTV is another interesting. That's a good question. There's certainly a requirement for us to look at the control room move to govern, and how we, for example, if Upper Nithsdale gets the new CCTV system, we talked about it the other day, how that's patched into there, how it can be monitored, and the whole approach to kind of CCTV. We have got at headquarters, the divisional headquarters, we have got some capacity there, and that would potentially provide a facility there that could monitor, but it will require investment, and again, money's tight, and where that money will come from. There's also other departments that are looking at feasibility in terms of, is there capacity, space, accommodation at the old headquarters that they can. So there's a number of different agencies looking at that just now. We're very keen to get the multi-agency hub in there in terms of the exchange of information with social work and other local agencies, education, etc., NHS. So there's a number of competing.
Yeah, so I think what I'm trying to get is that there's been funding allocated from the council for phase 1 and phase 2 of CCTV, which I appreciate will come back in this report, no doubt, to provide an update. But that's one of the partners, if you like. So it's just really to understand how these dovetail together, because obviously that would have been part of the work that's been going on in the last couple of years, given that this was a strategic decision for the region rather than just a council one. Although the money, the reserves was the council's to decide what to do with. But so it's really just to see how that's looking.
I've got to be honest and say I'm not completely sighted on this one. I would have to refer back to the group that's working with the council. Obviously, the council's the lead on CCTV for the region. We supply the staff that monitor the systems. So I think it's Ailsa Freeman who's the lead on it. So I'm afraid I couldn't answer that. Sorry.
Could I just bring Derek in?
Thank you. Where we're at the moment with the upgrade of CCTVs, we have been working with our partners in Police Scotland and the Community Safety Team to review our provision that we have across the region and the operational requirements for that. We have 13 systems that we plan. We have 11 existing systems, but we'll have an additional 2 brought online, and we're working at the moment to integrate those systems into one. There is a tender document that has been prepared and will be issued in the new year for the upgrade of the system. What we have to make decisions on and bring options back for members is we're looking at the moment is where we have that central monitoring point, and that's it's obviously where the technical difficulties have come in, but we've overcome those through the SWAN project. And the images can come back to a central location. So in the new year, we'll have a tender that will be ready to go out through the European procurement process. And then so the upgrade of the system will be done. We have to look at how we get a central monitoring location. That's still to be decided.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it's not a part of the report, but since we're on with CCTV, is consideration being taken while you're doing this work, Ailsa, of the regeneration projects that are going on around the region and the upgrading of the CCTV within them, because it would be the sensible time to do that while the regeneration works are being done. As I know specifically in Gretna, we're starting ours in January. The works are actually starting in January, so to have that linked in at the same time rather than have to come back and do that, because I think there was provision within the regeneration for upgrading our own CCTV.
Yes, we have been working with colleagues on regeneration projects. Gretna is a prime example of that. The CCTV camera poles, for example, that'll be on, they'll be part of the streetscape, so they'll blend in. They won't stand out as being something that's not in keeping with the area. We've also worked with our colleagues for the Stranraer Harbour project, for example, from what's happening down there. So yeah, we do that.
Right, thanks for that, Ailsa. I think at that we could go to the recommendations. Ronnie, do you want to come in?
Thanks for letting me back in. I had written it down, but it was the hate crime, which is a very generic term for lots of things. And I just wondered, it doesn't break it down, but reading the local press and talking to the local policemen, there's been a few rare incidents of shopkeepers and maybe takeaway outlets where things have been said that shouldn't have been said. And I'm just thinking on the back of that, which we've seen what happened in Paris and that, some of the backlash. And I don't know if that's reflected within this. It's not a very clear, hate crimes are quite, homophobic and all the other stuff that goes with it.
I'd say we have 3 outstanding incidents from the region. None of them relate to anything associated with the Paris attack. We have not experienced any, touch wood, any issues thus far since Paris with hate crime.
Okay, members, ready to go to the recommendations? Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report from Police Scotland for Dumfries and Galloway from 1st April 2015 to 30 September 2015 as detailed in the appendix. Agreed? Item 6, members, Road Safety and Policing Dumfries and Galloway 6-month performance report to 30 September 2015. Report with Director of Communities. The purpose of the report is to present the roads policing report for the first 2 quarters of 2015 to 30 September 2015 and to consider ongoing action to achieve milestones. Mike is still there but is now joined by Neil Hewitson, who will read the report and answer any members' queries.
Thank you very much, Chair. What I was going to talk about today was just the set-up of roads policing in Dumfries and Galloway now in comparison to what we had before in Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary, and the targets that we're required to meet, where we are at this moment in time in regards to those targets, and then a couple of interventions that we're doing, and I'll talk a bit about the crime car as well, which is quite innovative in Scotland and certainly in Police Scotland. So, in Dumfries and Galloway, we are making every effort to comply with the Government's Road Safety Framework to 2020, which makes certain requirements, one of which is to try and reduce the number of people killed and seriously injured on our roads by the year 2020. There is a very ambitious vision that by 2020 there will be no one killed on our roads in Scotland, which is very, very ambitious indeed. But we try and work towards that because we don't want anyone killed or seriously injured on our roads at any time, because we know the heartache that causes to people. And there's also a huge financial cost behind every fatal accident that we have. It costs society about £1.9 million. So there is a lot of money to potentially be saved there if we can reduce the number of people killed on our roads. But more to the point, we would like to reduce the heartache that it causes to loved ones as a result of crashes happening. So we work alongside, the police work alongside the Road Safety Partnership, which includes fire service, fiscal service, NHS, ambulance primarily, and members of the council as well. And we also work with the Safety Camera Unit, which is called now rather than the Safety Camera Partnership, who are responsible for enforcing speeding at known crash sites under various criteria. So, as I said before, we work towards the road safety framework, And that framework gives us certain targets towards 2015 and 2020. So we've got milestones for 2015 to reach, to try and reach, and we've got milestones to 2020. Clearly, we're not at the end of 2015 as yet, so I am not able to fully report on all the targets that we're able to meet at this moment in time. It's certainly looking very positive in terms of serious injuries. We are going to be well down, I would propose, in terms of our milestones for 2015 in terms of serious injuries, and we will reduce our slight injuries by possibly 50%-ish in terms of the milestones in 2015. So that's a success. Fatalities are not as successful. We have a milestone target to reach of 10 by the end of 2015, and we may struggle to meet that. We're coming into bad weather, obviously, now. We've experienced a lot of rain on our roads, and I would expect we'll see a bit of snow before the end of this year, which will be challenging for us. And clearly that's the big one that we want to try and achieve, is the number of fatalities. So what I have I've done this time is to try and set out just the fatals that we have had in this particular year alone. And I've explained in my report some of the fatals that have occurred and why they've occurred. Most of the fatalities that we've had this year have occurred on the trunks roads rather than the divisional roads. And I should explain at this moment in time that roads policing in Dumfries and Galloway is split into divisional roads policing, which I'm the head of divisional roads policing in Dumfries and Galloway, and trunks roads policing. Trunks roads policing should do what it says in the tin and look after the trunks roads, and divisional roads policing looks after all the other roads which are non-trunks roads. The trunks roads policing group is based at Lockerbie, and we have divisional roads policing at Stranraer, Castle Douglas and Dumfries, covering the rest of the region. Now, although there has been a split in terms of the division, we still work towards the areas that we did previously historically in Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary times. So my divisional roads policing guys at Stranraer will look after the A75 west of Newton Stewart. They'll look after the A77 as well, because we can't expect, it doesn't make sense for people to come from Lockerbie through to Stranraer on a daily basis when I've got people sitting across there that could do just as good a job. So we do share out resources as much as we possibly can, because the A74 is clearly a huge road for us, and it's a big transport link that needs to be kept open as much as we can. And if anything happens on the A74, it's a real problem for ourselves and the Scottish Government, who want to keep the road going, because it affects commerce if that road's closed at all. So we do still work to much the same way as we did previously in Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary days now, although there is this split between trunks roads and divisional roads policing. So in telling you a bit about the crashes that have happened this year, what we look for is trends occurring, and we analyse all our crashes to try and establish if there are any trends happening. So if there was a trend, for example, whereby there was a problem with speeding at a particular location on the A75, for example, then the idea is that that would come out through the analysis that we do of every statistical report that's submitted after a crash. And we would then determine that, right, there's a speeding problem there, and I would liaise with my colleagues in the council or Transport Scotland, wherever the location was, and we would see if there was any engineering solutions that we could put towards that. And if there wasn't, then we would look towards enforcement of that particular location. So we do that for every single crash where we attend. A statistical report is always submitted by the officers, whoever attends. When we have a fatal crash, it's analysed by ourselves, Transport Scotland or the local roads authority, depending where it happens. And we attend at each location to see if there are any problems with the road surface, with the signage, or anything else that might be a problem at that particular location. And we can make recommendations between us all to say, okay, roads department are going to do X or Y, and we're going to do X or Y too, which might mean enforcement at that particular location, for example. So the crashes that have happened this year, as I said, the fatal ones, most of them are occurring on trunks roads. We've had one that's occurred on the non-trunks roads down in the Port William area. And the frustrating thing is that there are no real patterns coming out as a result of that for me to say, okay, we need to do X or Y to try and overcome these crashes happening. The majority of the crashes are happening, the majority of people who have been fatally injured in the crashes are from out with the area. Now, that causes a bit of a problem in terms of education. It's difficult to educate people who don't stay in the area. We've got an area that's attractive to people passing through it, going to the boats, or going north on the A74 or south on the A74, whatever it might be. It's a major transport link. So it's difficult to educate the travelling public sitting here in Dumfries and Galloway. It has to be done nationally by Road Safety Scotland or the Department for Transport if it happens in England. So what I do is I try and encourage Road Safety Scotland to say, okay, we're having a problem, for example, with people who are falling asleep at the wheel on the A74. And I encourage them to put out literature with regards to that to see if we can overcome that. I encourage people to have a rest, have a break, have a coffee to overcome that at any particular time. Now, of course, that's reliant upon the people doing what we're asking them to do, and we can't always guarantee that 100% of the time, which is why sometimes crashes happen in the first place. So there are numerous reasons why the crashes are happening, and we're doing everything we can to try and overcome the reasons for the crashes happening in the first place. One of the main things that policing can do is clearly enforce road traffic offences where we think that they contribute to crashes. And you'll see from the report that we are down in terms of a number of the offences which have been identified as causing crashes. But what you need to understand is that the number of serious injury crashes, which have happened, are well down this year. As of Monday, they were down by, so serious injuries are down by 21 in comparison to the same time last year. And the number of fatal crashes as of Monday, as opposed to being 9 in comparison to 5, which is in the report here, it's actually 9 in comparison to 7 at the same time last year. So the figures have become better since this report was produced for the second quarter to the end of September 2015. So what the government tends to do, and what we tend to do as well, is we include killed and seriously injured as a category, KSI it's called, because we know that sometimes there are very tiny margins between someone getting off with a crash, becoming seriously injured, if I can call it that, and someone dying as a result of a crash as well. So we need to try and concentrate on killed and seriously injured. And if you have to take both killed and seriously injured together, we are well down in that category as a whole. And we're well down on that in terms of our targets as well. So that's good. In terms of enforcement, we're down in the number of people detected for seatbelts and mobile phones in comparison to last year. And I would suggest that's down to people complying with it more, certainly in terms of seatbelt usage. I don't see as many people not wearing seatbelts, and I think we're finally trying to get the message across to people that, look, you must wear your seatbelt. Mobile phone usage, we're not detecting as many people on their mobile phone as well, which is a good thing, although it is frustrating. I'm sure when we're all out in our own cars, we'll see people on their phones at times, and it's always the way that if they see a marked police car going about, then they don't tend to use their mobile phone. So that's quite difficult for us sometimes to detect that one. One of the highlights in terms of detections is the number of drink driving offences, which are well down, and they are well down in comparison to every other division in Scotland. What we are tending to find is that we're not getting many, if any, drink drivers now who are just over the new limit. We did a lot of media work last year because of the fact that we stay right next to Cumbria. We did a lot of work last year to try and overcome the problem that we thought might happen between folk travelling between Cumbria and Scotland, to try and make them understand that, look, there is a big difference here. So I think we concentrated on that probably more than other regions did, who didn't join England as much as we do and have that association perhaps as much as we do with our Cumbrians. We've seen a massive reduction in the number of drink drivers, but what is interesting is that the drink drivers that we are tending to get now are well over the limit. They're not people that are just maybe 2 or 3 above the limit. They are 4 and 5 times the limit. So it's the real risk takers, the real kind of bad ones, I suppose you want to call it that we're getting now. And they're the ones that are causing the most harm or are likely to cause the most harm to innocent road users. So that is good in that respect that we've caught as many. Educational inputs, you'll see from the report that they are down in total in comparison to last year, but what we've done is we've introduced Safe Drive Stay Alive, which is aimed at S5 and S6 pupils. So instead of previously what used to happen was our schools officers used to go into schools and spend a period with an S6 class and tell them about driving and tell them about how dangerous it is and drink driving and that sort of thing. What we do now is we get them all en masse over a 2-day period, and we put on the presentation called Safe Drive Stay Alive, which is a very, very hard-hitting presentation that we put on towards S5 and S6, those people who are on the cusp of just starting to drive. And that has, we think, from the sheets that we've got back, the analytical sheets we've got back, very hard-hitting, but seems to hit the spot with S5s and S6s. It's certainly got a big emotional impact on them when they come out after the presentation. You quite often find that some of them are in tears at the end of it. There is a bit of science behind that says that maybe it's too hard-hitting, but I think in these days of kids playing computer games and knowing all about seeing blood and guts on television, I think it's sometimes hard to make something hard-hitting so that they understand it and think about it more in the future. So I'm of the belief that Safe Drive Stay Alive is a good thing, and that's hitting more pupils at any one time. So that's the reason for our road safety inputs going down, because we're hitting a lot of pupils in one particular period. The other thing that we're doing in Dumfries and Galloway at this moment in time, which isn't being done anywhere else, and it's on the back of ourselves and our partners in the Road Safety Partnership, having an understanding that the demographics in Dumfries and Galloway are such that we have an ageing population here, and we've found that a lot more elderly people are having some crashes, some of which are serious crashes, and that's causing us problems on the roads. So what we have done is we've introduced the elderly driver scheme, and we've done it in every area of Dumfries and Galloway now, primarily through funding from NHS. We've been able to put out an advertising campaign whereby drivers can volunteer, elderly drivers can volunteer if they feel their confidence is low with regards to driving. Perhaps their partner's died and they haven't driven for many years and they're not happy to go back in the car, but they need their car to get about. We are trying to encourage them to come into the scheme. We'll provide them with a driving assessment to a driving instructor for an hour, and the driving instructor will take them out and will assess them, and he or she will give them an idea as to where they might want to firm up on. They might give them an idea that they might want to take further lessons to just enhance their driving skills. And at the end of that, they get an assessment to say what they've done, where their shortfalls are, and we'll also do a plenary session at the end of the scheme, which we get a consultant in from the Crichton who tells the members of the audience there all about what to expect if you're an elderly driver, how to overcome some of the shortcomings that you might face as an elderly driver, and they also get an input from a road policing officer as well, just as to what we are trying to get through to them at this minute in time. So it's not been done anywhere else in Scotland that I'm aware of at this moment in time, but we are doing it to try and get in the front foot with regards to elderly drivers, and I'm hopeful that on the success of that, there's been one completed through Stranraer so far, and the feedback from that has been very, very good, and I'm hopeful that the NHS will see the benefit in that and will continue to fund us in the future for the elderly driver scheme, because I think it's going to be a good thing in the fullness of time. So that's a lot about what roads policing does and the highlights of what it has done. Now, the superintendent, chief superintendent, sorry, mentioned about the crime car, which is another aspect that we utilise now in Dumfries and Galloway. We've always been quite good at identifying travelling criminals and reporting them for various offences, more so probably than any other division in Scotland. And we decided to formalise this with the introduction of the crime car. The crime car's been going now for about a year, and the idea is that it works mostly in the trunks routes, mostly in the A74, and it does what it says in the tin. It tries to pick up crime off the road. It's been a huge success so far. We've picked up £900,000 worth of drugs in the past year, stolen goods, counterfeit property, everything that leads towards serious organised crime, because serious and organised criminals use the roads network as much as anybody else does. And if we can impact upon them by using the crime car, then that's got to be a good thing, and that's got to be what we're here for at the end of the day. We've arrested 218 people using the crime car as well over the past year, so a fantastic benefit. And just to pick up on one of the questions that was put forward earlier about the drugs being caught in A74 and perhaps not being destined for Dumfries and Galloway, you're right in that respect that a lot of these drugs would probably be going to major cities, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, whatever it might be, but some of them drugs would be coming here. There's no doubt about it, through sub-dealers. So we are directly affecting what is able to come to Dumfries and Galloway. It's not just about the big cities, but we're all one now. We're a national force. This is a national asset we've got down here in Dumfries and Galloway, and if that takes off drugs out of the circulation in Scotland, to me that's got to be a good thing. Really, that's all I've got to say at this moment in time. I would welcome any questions that you have for me.
Thanks for that, Neil. Alistair, are you?
Thanks, Chair. A couple of points. I'm delighted to see that there's been a reduction in the number of mobile phone users, which is one of my pet hates. It probably goes back to the time I had a near miss with somebody on their phone and not noticing that I was there. And, so I wondered how that's come about. Is it just a cultural change, or is it because you've nabbed a few people and the word's got out that you're going to do that or you'll get into trouble? That's my first point. Second one is I have to admit, in terms of 3.10, that the elderly drivers probably have reached that stage now. I had something on telly last night in that I think it's a similar scheme in England where people my age are probably 20% less and 20% slower in reacting to somebody 35 years younger than me. However, I think an awareness of that is probably a justification for continuing to drive if you drive more cautiously. I wondered, however, though, obviously most of the fatalities are people much younger than me. I'm much younger than elderly drivers, but is it the case that some of the accidents that occur are the minor accidents are due to elderly drivers? There's no breakdown of statistics here. I wouldn't expect that. Or is it also the case that perhaps if I'm going along a country road at 50 miles an hour and a young buck behind me wants to do 60 and he takes a risk, so is my driving impinging on, in a sense it creates an accident, although I don't think people should overtake when it's not safe to do so.
Yeah, firstly, on the mobile phone aspect, I think it's a combination of many things. I think that people are conscious of the fact, are getting to become more conscious of the fact that if they're seen, they will be reported and they'll be fined £100 and 3 penalty points. But there's quite a lot of technologies built into cars now, and quite, I suppose, kind of basic models of cars even now have the facility where you can hook up your phone to your radio or whatever it might be, and you can speak on the sort of hands-free system in cars rather than use your mobile phone next to your ear. Not that I'm encouraging people to do that, but that is one probably major reason why we're not seeing people using their mobile phone physically now at this moment in time, is that technology in cars is getting better all the time, and you're able to utilise the technology within the cars. So that's probably one of the big reasons for us not seeing as many people using their mobile phones, although people still are, there's no doubt about it. With regards to elderly drivers, yeah, I haven't put much of a breakdown here in terms of the slight injury crashes and the serious injury crashes that we think are caused by elderly drivers, perhaps being less mobile than they were, and their reactions being slower, or just a general lack of confidence in what they're doing. I could put that in, but it would be a lot of statistics to put in. That's the only thing. I mean, really, at the end of the day, if you're doing 50 miles an hour and someone's overtaking you at 60 miles an hour at a place that's inappropriate to be doing that, then they're the ones that will be getting reported rather than you doing 50 miles an hour. We want everybody to be safe on the road at that particular time and doing the right speed at the right location. And whether that's an old person or a young person, it makes no difference. You have to do the right thing at the right time.
Councillor Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's good that applaud the community engagement with young drivers, because that's a good initiative that hopefully will have an impact. Just looking at the statistics on 77 and 78, I suppose it's, to understand the figures, you've got to know the amount of effort put into each of these priorities. Yeah, the mobile phones, is there a reduction, or are we putting less time into it, into detecting mobile phone offences? I notice also that the number of people reported for dangerous driving is down 24%. Does that mean that there are less people driving dangerously, or is there less effort into detecting them and following that up? Number of speeding offences has gone up 18.4%. Is that because we're spending more time in speeding? So the question is, how do you record effort so we know that, so we can detect whether the figures mean we've spent less time in that offence or more time in that offence?
It's a very good point. I think with regards to mobile phones, what we do is 3 weeks in the year we have 3 operations ongoing, which are designed for the whole of the division to play their part in terms of offences which we know contribute to crashes, such as mobile phones and seat belts, drink driving, that sort of thing. And consistently throughout that time, through these operations, the staff are sent out to target those particular offences, and consistently the numbers of offences found during these operations, particularly mobile phones, are going down. So to me, if we're going out and targeting these through the 3 weeks that we have done, if we're targeting these and not finding them, then to me that indicates that there's less people doing them, and we can illustrate that we are targeting those offences during these operations at any one time.
Just one follow-up. So do we advise the public that we're going to do these campaigns, and does that help if we're telling them what's going on? Do they take heed?
Yes, we do. Prior to each of the operations, there's a media release goes out to say what we're doing at that particular time. So, for example, in November, we had the National Brake Safety Week, which was designed to target these offences and also look after vulnerable road users like pedestrians, motorcyclists, and pedal cyclists. So we do tell people at the start of the operations that we're going out to do this, and we're hopeful that people take cognizance of that, and if they're taking cognizance of that, then they shouldn't be doing that at that particular time, which would again hopefully lead us to catch less people and get them thinking about not using their mobile phone. With regards to dangerous driving, yes, you're absolutely right. The number of dangerous drivers is down, but the number of careless drivers that were reported are up by 15% from 287 to 330. So whilst we're not catching as many dangerous drivers, we're catching more careless drivers. And dangerous driving is sometimes more difficult to capture than careless driving, because dangerous driving is a commission by someone, a driver, so they go out to kind of drive dangerously, rather than someone having a sort of lapse in concentration, which is more of a careless driving, and that's more common for us to see as perhaps careless driving in comparison to dangerous driving. So whilst one is down, the other is up in terms of careless driving. And just with regards to speeding, speeding causes us problems with injuries and injury crashes. The more you speed, the more likely you are to be seriously injured in a crash. So I'll make no apologies about us catching more people speeding, because we know that causes people to become more injured during crashes. And so I think it's only right that we're out there and trying to enforce as much as we can. As I've said, most of our crashes are occurring on trunks roads, our fatal crashes are occurring on trunks roads, which are faster roads. So we'll go out and concentrate our efforts in those areas and enforcing that type of behaviour.
Thank you. I was pleased to see your jam sandwich car this morning sitting up Steel Avenue on the Glasgow Street, because every day for about the last 4 or 5 weeks, and maybe even longer, the amount of people that are using that bus lane that are come speeding down there, you know, I thought hopefully somebody's reported that and that's them back their out for that. So it was nice to see. Also, I would like to see still happening that the folk jumping the lights, the ones at the sands, whether it's a problem with the sequence of the lights or whatever, the time lapse between coming up the sands and onto Buccleuch Street. I think any day you go by there, you'll see buses, taxis. In fact, yesterday at 5 o'clock, was it 5 o'clock-ish, the road was actually blocked because they'd come round and oncoming traffic couldn't get through. So, I mean, that is I know that Bobby Moore, when I said it to Bobby Moore, he said, we don't have any accidents there. I said to him, have a look at the railings and tell me why would the damage to them's caused if it's not accidents?
Well, I know the White Sands in particular. We've looked at the White Sands and we've looked at the timing of the lights there together with the council, and the timing of those lights were designed by the council in such a way that it lets the traffic flow better. But like every other probably traffic light in the Fries, there are some people that do jump them. There's no doubt about it. We have to be there at the right time, the right place at the right time to catch them doing that and report them for that. So I'm quite happy to have another look at the White Sands and see if we can get some people jumping there. I know that certainly at night, when we've had problems with some of the street cruisers down the White Sands, we've reported quite a number of them for jumping the lights at the White Sands. So it's not something that we ignore, but I'm quite happy to take it back and have another look.
Okay, is that Graham?
Thanks, Chair. My question is back on speeding. Obviously, the fences are up. So what areas are you finding? Is it built-up areas? And obviously, when you're catching people, what enforcement are you doing? And is a lot of it to do with driving behaviour and like changing the radio? You know, they've got a good song on and they just accelerate a bit more. So can you just expand on them kind of areas? Obviously, what locality is it? And in the Celestial, what areas are you finding that are quite high in speeding offences, please?
There's not really one area in particular that I can say to you has got a particular problem with speeding. We are concentrating a lot of efforts on the trunks roads. The A74 has got a very it's a good stretch of road, if you want to call it that, and as a result of that, people don't perceive as much danger in the A74, and they do tend to go at higher speed on the A74. So we do concentrate some efforts on the A74 because we know that high speed at all on there does cause us problems. There's been at least one fatal this year. It happened earlier this year. whereby a Mercedes motor car was travelling south in the early hours of the morning, and it's mentioned on there, and the driver of the Mercedes was travelling at very, very high speed at that time in the morning. The devastation caused to the Mercedes was huge. I've never seen one as bad as that, because it hit a bridge parapet and basically half the car. And as a result of that, the 2 occupants died in the car. Now, I'm quite sure, had he not been going at the speed that we know he was going at, the damage to that car would have been considerably less, and they would have been seriously injured, probably as a result, but I don't think they would have died. With regards to the causes for speeding, I think it's just a general lack of awareness. I don't think it's to do with people listening to their favourite song, maybe on the radio, and putting their foot down because they like that song and they like to get a buzz when they're listening to that song, kind of thing. I think it's just a general lack of awareness about what the speed limit is at that particular location. And for example, a good example of that would probably be your transit van, your white van driver. They're mostly confined to 50 miles an hour on the 75, for example. A lot of van drivers think they can go at 60 miles an hour on the 75. They don't know what the speed limit is for their type of vehicle. So that causes us big problems, because these vans can't handle the same as a car can, and there's a reason why they're limited to 50 miles an hour, because they're carrying loads and they don't have the same characteristics as a car has. So a lot of it's awareness of drivers. A lot of drivers aren't aware of the fact that they're in a built-up area, because people forget, they read their highway code 20 years ago when they passed their test, for example, and they forget what a 30 mile an hour limit sign looks like, and if there's no 30 miles an hour limit sign, what are the other indications to look out for, which is street lamps. If there's street lamps in that road, then there must be a restricted road there, so it must be either with 30 or 40 miles an hour in that particular location. People forget that. They shouldn't, but they do. I mean, I would love it if everyone was acquainted and well acquainted with their highway code, rather than just reading it for the first 6 months when they've got a provisional driving licence, and then chucking it in a drawer, never to be opened again for the rest of their life, probably. And that's probably what we're experiencing, is just a general lack of awareness of speed limits.
Okay, then, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. And it's on a similar vein, actually, to do with speeding. I'm certainly, and I'm sure all members are, certainly getting more and more concerns from communities about speeding within the communities, or certainly the perception of speeding within the communities. Because we understand that there is an increase in vehicle movements. There are larger vehicles on the roads these days, and of course the farm vehicles, which mostly tend to be on the mobile phone at the same time, as they're coming through the villages at maybe 40 miles an hour or 35, as the farm vehicles can do these days. So there is certainly a greater concern from communities of speeding within the 30-mile zone of their own community. And I was just sort of interested if the figures that you have here on speeding, have they all been captured from the national limit, or is speeding within the communities included within that data? And maybe, possibly in the future at some time there could be a bit of a split between the ones caught within the restricted zones. I don't know if that would be possible. But there's certainly a greater concern from communities of speeding within that, from all vehicles, but especially farm vehicles these days.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The figures are a total figure for all speeders caught. So it's speeders in restricted roads and non-restricted roads. I am not sure how we would split them up to report on that. I would need to have a wee look at that and see how or if we could do that, because I'm just not sure how we would do that. But I'll have a look. And you're right, yes, I do get a lot of complaints from various villages and towns throughout the region about the perception of speeding in their area. And unlike in the olden days, perhaps, when tractors were tractors and they could only do 15 miles an hour, a lot of tractors nowadays are very, very powerful machines, and they can do well in excess of 30 miles an hour now, and they can pull far bigger loads than they did 10, 20 years ago. And a lot of it is perception, because they make a lot of noise, they rattle along the road, and people think, oh, it must be speeding that. But quite often we go out and we'll speak to a complainer and say, okay, what speed do you think that person's doing? And they'll say, oh, it must be 45. And in actual fact, it's maybe 33 or something like that. So what we do have various resources that we can deploy at these kind of speeding complaints. The safety camera unit's got a trailer, a speed trailer that we can trail out, and we put that at the side of a road, say in Eastriggs, for example. If we had a problem with speeding in Eastriggs, we would put the trailer out there, and that does the same as some of these speed signs that you see that are erected full time in roads, at the side of roads. It'll show you your speed, but more importantly, from my point of view, we'll sit it there for maybe 3 or 4 hours at any one time, and it monitors every speed of every vehicle that passes. There's a computer inside this trailer, and we download the data from the computer at the end of the day, and that'll tell me what the mean speed was for that particular location, what the 85th percentile is, and the 85th percentile is very important because that's what roads engineers work on to work out the speed limit for that particular location. So it's the 85th percentile is very important for me. So this computer will do that for me. It'll say, okay, we sat there from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, 300 vehicles passed the trailer, the highest speed was 53, for example, and the lowest speed was 27, and the mean speed was 32, and the 85th percentile was 31.7, or whatever it might be. And if the trailer comes back and says, there's a speeding problem here, then I'll send my staff out to that particular location, and I'll also liaise with the local roads department and say to them, look, I think we've got a problem here. It might be that we might need, or they might need to try and engineer some kind of solution in, be that some kind of traffic calming measure, chicanes, maybe some signs, some more signage and that sort of thing. So yes, you're right, there are problems coming in, there are complaints coming in, but we're doing our best to try and service them all. But I will always concentrate my enforcement officers on areas where we know we've got a crash problem, because it would be remiss of me not to do that. We have got a very limited amount of resources, and we've got thousands of kilometres of roads to try and cover in Dumfries and Galloway. So my priority is always going to be areas where I know that there's a crash problem and an injury problem, and that's what I always do first. But we have got various other methods we can do first before I'm going to send cops out to stand there and enforce.
Mike, will you want to come in on this?
Yeah, Neil's probably stole my point that I was going to make, but it's quite an interesting one, kind of flipping it a wee bit, that we've got an example just now of a village on the 75 where regardless of the surveys getting done, or regardless of the amount of effort and work that's going into it to try and explain to that community that there is not a problem with speeding in that particular section of road, you will have members of the community just won't listen to you. Regardless of what the empirical data is telling you, it's not giving them the solution that they want. And there's one in particular that, it's their raison d'etre. But Neil touched on it, we've got a huge road network. We need to focus the priorities on where the problem profile is telling us to stop people getting injured. And sometimes that can cause some members of the community a fair bit of angst.
Okay, thanks. Okay, great. Stephen?
Thanks again, Chair. Yeah, it was just touching back on the mobile phone offences. Just on the bottom of page 78 there, it's got the wee qualifier, the increased use of discretionary warning, and I think it was really just to, how would we know how many people were using mobile phones? Is that the same as what's detected, or is when something's classed as detected, is that how many there were?
That's the amount of people who have been reported by use of a fixed penalty ticket, or they've been reported straight to the Procurator Fiscal. So they've been charged with regards to the offence. That's that number there. But in roads policing, we also keep warnings, so numbers of warnings which we record and we give out to people. That's not done for every single officer in Dumfries and Galloway. That's simply roads policing themselves do it throughout Scotland, so that we can say how many warnings we've done at any one time, any one day, any one month, any one week, and how many people were reported over that same period. But that's not the same for every single officer. So your normal beat officers don't record that. It's only roads policing that record those warnings that we do, because we concentrate on that. The roads policing, the beat officers have got a myriad of things that they have to try and do on a daily basis. So it's only roads policing that record the warnings as such.
No, that's helpful. I think it's really just to know what we're able to know. So so we can't. I mean, we can't really, from what you're saying there, get any sense of how many are actually given a warning in these reports for future scrutiny, is what I'm meaning.
What I can do is I can give warnings that road policing officers give, but I can't give you warnings that other officers might give because, for example, they might be uncorroborated at a time that they stop someone who is using a mobile phone. They might say to them, "Look, I saw you on your mobile phone. I can't report you because I'm uncorroborated at this moment in time, but don't do it again," kind of thing. So I can only give you the warnings that roads policing officers do, but that wouldn't include every other officer in the Dumfries and Galloway, only roads policing officers.
Yeah, no, that'd be really helpful, and hopefully the rest of the committee would be happy to see that as well. It's just at least it's a step towards getting a wee bit more, and even if it's got a qualifying sentence saying this does not include, X, Y, and Z. And the second thing was just a minor thing really, but you see the table on page 81, it's got the road death summaries, and it indicates there whether or not it's a trunk road, etc., and a wee bit of sort of summary detail about each instance. Would it be possible, do you see the sort of over the page, it's got the wee breakdown of the underlying reason for the crash, so in some cases it might be excess alcohol or speeding or whatever it might be. I was just wondering, was that separated out because of being able to identify somebody with a particular cause of accident, or is there, could that be included in the same table? And just on that as well, I don't know if the first one, the pedestrian killed as a result of excess alcohol, is it the pedestrian that had the alcohol or the driver? Do you know what I mean? So it's just, there's a wee bit of ambiguity in some of them there, where I don't know if it's the driver and the passenger killed it with somebody else's sleep deprivation, or if it was that driver that had this, so it's just maybe, there's a couple of ambiguities there that could be ironed out as well.
I noticed that this morning, just before I came to present, I wondered if that might be a bit misleading. Certainly the pedestrian killed as a result of the excess alcohol, it was the pedestrian who had the excess alcohol who was killed, and the one with the sleep deprivation, there was two people in that car, and the driver had sleep deprivation. But it's kind of difficult for me to always provide context for every single one, because some of them are sub judice, and they're subject to ongoing proceedings at this moment in time. So I couldn't give you everything that you might want for every single fatal crash. I've done it in this particular location, in this particular occasion, because of the numbers that we've got in comparison to what we had at the same time last year. But I couldn't do that on every single occasion because of the sub judice laws that we have to work towards.
Just a quick final one, Chair, thank you. And it was just to echo Councillor Peacock in terms of the breakdown of the speeding offences. I think that's that would actually be a really good idea, to be able to know if it was it all on the trunk road, was it a non-trunk road, was it a 30 or 40, and I appreciate you'll be limited maybe in terms of what your system can readily provide, but what we'd like to see and what your system can provide might not always be the same, but we should at least ask for it, So that would be great if that could be taken on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Final question, then we'll go to recommendations. Run it.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and be quick before there's nobody left. I thought I wanted to quote it there, but anyway. Just to make an observation, I've been sitting on this committee in its various guises for many, many years, and in fact I used to chair, and we've agonised over the statistics and how we target fatalities. I remember it wasn't long into Pat Shearer's reign that there was a bit of a focus on fatalities. Then there was the crash up the Glen at 5 in one go. Well, you just put your statistics, and how do you predict that? And, I hear what you're saying about the targets, and I think, yeah, it's to say we'll try and have 0, but you only need one bad crash, or and it's people are people, and it's hard. So I'll make that observation. Go to page 81. I was just looking at the locations of some of the fatalities, and what surprised me more than anything was just the one on the A75, because it used to be perceived as a dangerous road. So with the bypasses and the road improvements, it's making that better. That seems to bear out the statistics. The A74, well, you only need that one crash, and that Mercedes more saw it on the telly. Pretty horrifying. Can I ask the question? It's all members have asked it before, but I'm curious because the 3493 speeding offences, how many of them were caught by the speed camera? Sorry, safety camera. Not to call it a speed camera, but the safety camera, because it's a static thing and it just churns out a fine. I mean, I once challenged this when we made £1 million off it way back in the old Annandale and Eskdale Lower Area Committee, and there's education, but it was on the transit route. Both. So it wasn't the local people. So how do you educate people who are travelling through, the transient people that's going up the motorway or along from? I mean, some of the worst drivers actually have a Z number plate, so I take it they're coming from Ireland. Can I say that out loud? Oh, we're no quote now. That's it. We're finished. Anyway, just to finish off, there's a couple of questions today, but just to finish off, Chair, I was coming here this morning, and just before, so I've come from Annan, just before I got to the Cullen bypass, this Arctic come across both white lines, and my heart went right down at my knees because it's either go down that dip there, but then he pulled himself back. Now, he wasn't on, you always look up and see if they're on mobile phones or having their coffee or reading the newspaper or whatever, because you see some strange things. I think he was tired. And the next one that come behind him, he was yawning. And I thought, they're coming off these ferries, I take it. And, how tired are they? How do we, okay, I got a fright because he crossed the double white lines, and so there's not much room left for me to go anywhere. And that happens quite a lot. And you'll know yourself, because obviously you travel the roads, how many lorries actually go off the road and you just see the gouges in the grass verge. Well, I've never seen as many. Come here 3 or 4 times a week now, and you think, gee whiz, that must have been a close accident. And the council's repairing them, and you think, is there too many distractions in a cab now, or they're tired? I know they've got these tachographs. So, sorry, Chair, I was trying to be very brief there, but there's so many things I just need to get off my chest. Thanks.
With regards to the lorries, I'll take that first. Yeah, the lorries are all fitted with tachographs, and the idea behind the tachographs was just to do exactly that, which was to define how long drivers are supposed to drive for before they have a rest, and how long they can drive for each day, and how much rest they're supposed to have on a daily basis. I can guarantee you there is no other division in Scotland who is reporting as many people for tachograph offences as V Division, Dumfries and Galloway are. We are very much on top of the game in comparison to everywhere else in Scotland, and we're miles ahead of anybody else with regards to tachograph legislation and how much we enforce down here. We know that causes problems. Historically, we know there's been some horrendous crashes involving lorry drivers who have fallen asleep, and they have killed others as a result of falling asleep. And we know that the A75 carries the largest amount of freight of any road in Scotland. So, and that's all going to the boat and coming from the boat. So there is no doubt about it. Lorries are enforced as much as we possibly can. We've got a very good or bad reputation, whatever way you want to look at it, amongst the haulage companies who don't particularly like us, because there's a very high chance that they'll get stopped in the Dumfries and Galloway, and they'll be reported for tachograph offences. So we are very much on top of the game there in comparison to anywhere else in Scotland. But nevertheless, you're right, we do see the verges getting churned up as well. And I think maybe part of that is the verges are so soft at this time of the year, you maybe see it more than perhaps you do at other times. Aye, well, that's absolutely right. So we do a lot of enforcement to try and overcome that aspect of it. With regards to the speed cameras, I can't give you the figures just right now, but I can break that down for you in future, for future reports.
Just on that point, I take it the figures include what's captured by the safety camera?
I don't think they do, no. But I'll confirm that. I don't think they do. But I'll confirm that with you.
I think that would be useful to get that. We okay to go to the recommendations? Well, there's still some of us here. Scrutinise the roads policing performance report for Dumfries and Galloway from 1st April 2015 to 30 September 2015 and comparisons with 2014 performance as detailed in the appendix. Agreed?
There were some suggestions put forward. They captured, and will they be captured and minuted, sort of thing?
Yeah,
Or
I'm sure
actioned?
Lucy has captured them, yes. She's assured me that she has. But that's when you was the chairman, you were maybe a wee bit more up to date. Would you like to? Yeah. All the relevant points are recorded in a minute. We've been assured. Are you okay with that? Huh? Be action. Yes. I have that assurance. That's nice that you're satisfied. To note the improvement action ongoing, particularly the Elder Drivers Scheme for older people, the Safe Drive Stay Alive programme for young drivers, and the crime car for travelling criminals. Great. Item 7 on the agenda, Police Scotland and Dumfries and Galloway Continuous Improvement Group report by the Director of Communities. This report provides members with information on the work and composition of the recently formed Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Continuous Improvement Group and seeks nomination for a substitute member in accordance with the Council's scheme of representation on outside bodies. Is Andrew Reid coming out of the corner, or is Derek doing it? Is Derek doing all the hard work for you?
I'll keep it simple, Chairman. I'm sure there's no connection between the number of members we started with and the numbers we're left with. In light of you're looking for a willing volunteer, self-explanatory report. It's important that we maintain the partnership working that we've seen in evidence today with Police Scotland, and therefore, in the event that John wasn't available to attend the group, it would be helpful to have a substitute. I'm sure members will want to nominate someone. Thank you.
No, Chair. Chair, I'm just nominating Councillor Ogilvie to take that position.
Thank you, John.
I do that.